Right now, there are crowds of protesters gathered outside of Delaney Hall, a private detention center in New Jersey under contract with ICE. Inside, upwards of 300 detainees have organized a hunger strike. These human beings, our neighbors, if Jesus has anything to say about it, have endured abominable conditions. Reports from inside describe food filled with maggots, cancer patients being denied medications, visitation rights ignored. They talk about being forced to clean and maintain the facility for $1 a day, if indeed they're paid at all. Sounds like a pretty profitable business model if you can stomach it. Free and coerced labor is an economic addiction some of our countrymen have simply never been able to kick. One detainee by the name of Martin Soto had had enough, decided that he could not in fact stomach it, and organized this hunger strike, which began on Thursday, the 21st. ICE panicked, and in the dead of night last week, transferred him to another facility. Nevertheless, the hunger strike continues, and right now there are crowds of protesters gathered outside of Delaney Hall, crying justice as loud as they can. They've been pepper sprayed, pushed into oncoming traffic, beaten with batons, and arrested. The state's elected representatives have been denied entry, despite courts all over the country insisting that oversight access is their legal right. Over the weekend, state police moved in, and, as you can probably guess, tensions continued to escalate. Now, I'm going to say some facts here, some things that I noticed while learning about this situation, and let me just preface it by saying, this is not a buildup to gender or sex essentialism. Probably didn't expect me to say that, did you? But it is simply true that I am able to report on conditions on the ground at Delaney Hall because of women. Every article I read about this was written by a woman. Fully 3/4 of the activists and protesters quoted in articles I've read have been women. And every single one of my personal contacts in local ICE resistance networks is a woman. It's a stark contrast to the hyper-masculinization of the president's administration, isn't it? All those proud white men endlessly bloviating about traditional gender roles and men as tough protectors and the warrior ethos, whatever that is. They've worked hard to edge out just about every woman from every position of visible leadership, haven't they? Maybe they keep a few around for appearances, but you and I both know that in their world, obedience and loyalty are the two laws from which everything else hangs. Leadership, per se, is not exactly on the table for those who remain. Now, I've heard it suggested before that much of what we're living through right now, in that sense, is connected to a particular billionaire backlash against Me Too, if you remember. A time when women all over the world, but especially here in the States, started sharing stories that had once been shamed into silence. And together, we all began to realize that these dots of trauma and abuse were connected. In that knowledge, we found some power. And that power freaked some guys out. The banner slogan, the mantra of the time was, "Listen to women." And we did. And that also freaked some guys out. Funny how listening to women can be such a threat. And this morning, with thanks to Pastor Will for reading, we got to listen to two prayers from women of the Bible. One is from Mary, the prayer often referred to as the Magnificat. The other, perhaps less well-known, comes from Hannah, mother of Samuel, for whom the books 1 and 2 Samuel are named. Samuel is the prophet who anoints young David as king in the Hebrew Scriptures. And in the interest of time, I'm going to assume that we all know a fair bit about Mary's context and the glorious impossibility of her pregnancy. Hannah is someone you might be a little less familiar with. Mary is, of course, young, but Hannah is an older woman, one of those Old Testament women like Sarah or Rebecca who are unable to conceive, possibly because of age, possibly for some other reason. And one day, Hannah goes to the temple and prays intensely to God to grant her a son. She says, "If only you will look on the misery of your servant and remember me. If you will give to your servant a male child, then I will set him before you as a Nazirite," which is to say that she will give him to the local priest to be raised in the temple. Lo and behold, it comes to pass that she bears a son and names him Samuel, which means set aside by or borrowed from God. They raise him in those early years until he can be weaned, and then she brings Samuel to the temple. Today's scripture is her prayer right after giving her son away to the priest. So there are some obvious differences between these two women. One is older, one younger. One has just given her son away, the other has yet to be born. In Hannah's time, pre-King David, the Israelites have not yet established a kingdom. In Mary's time, it's long since been established, yet they labor under Roman imperial rule. But despite these differences, their prayers evoke so much of the same spirit. And it's a singing spirit. Indeed, though their melodies are lost to time, both of these prayers are in fact songs. These women pray music. These children are both conceptions that shouldn't have happened, that couldn't have happened. And yet, here they are. Hannah and Mary both sing from a place of surprise, of unexpected gratitude. They sing to us from the sight of the impossible. They sing from the dead end that turned out to be no such thing. They sing from the way made out of no way. And what do they sing about? A God of power and might, of knowledge and mercy and faithfulness. A God who has already done tremendous things, who has looked after the needy, the poor, the lowly. A God who has toppled tyrants and turned power structures upside down, who has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. Mary and Hannah make no requests of God in these songs, no wishes for what God might later accomplish. Instead, they tell a story of what God has already done. It's not the only version of the story they could tell, right? But it's the version they choose. And that choice matters. Mary and Hannah sing to us from the sight of the impossible. Injustice abounds all around them, but in this place, God shines through. And this glimmer of hope, of a way out of no way, changes everything. Suddenly, even the tiniest glimpse of promise reorients the past dramatically, completely. Because when you think it all ends to a dead end, well, that's the story you tell. It becomes a story of missed exits, botched repairs, bad choices. But these new lives of Samuel and Jesus, they suddenly flip the whole narrative on its head. The future lives. The timeline for the moral arc of the universe to bend towards justice gets extended in both directions, not just into the future of possibility, but into the past as well, scooping up its events and recontextualizing them into an entirely different story. And there are obvious reasons why pregnancy and birth are powerful locations for hope. Just last week, On a single day, I received fertility news from no less than 4 friends. And of course, it filled my heart with unbridled joy. There's nothing like it, even if it's not your kid. But that said, I also don't think that the inspiration of Hannah and Mary is limited to just that one procreative act. The songs they sing are for everyone. Why else do we sing at all? The vision of hope they proclaim is a story to be shared far and wide. For anyone who feels like they're running out of options and can't see a way forward, this song is for you. Anyone who feels like their narrative is a series of mistakes or missteps that have brought them to a dead end, this song is for you. Anyone who'd like to see a few bows of the mighty broken, this song is for you. For anyone who needs to be reminded that God has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly, she has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty and come to the aid of her children, this song is for you. The melodies may be lost to time, but we still know the words. I want to take us back to Delaney Hall, a place where I know so many feel trapped and out of options. And I want to tell you about another woman, Sister Susan Francois. Sister Susan is a Catholic nun who lives in Jersey, less than an hour away from Delaney Hall. She's got short gray hair and glasses, doesn't wear a habit, but often seems to sport some lovely hats. Around this time last year, she began to set up a little tent twice a week, every week, outside the facility fences with a big red banner that says, Radical Hospitality Zone. In this tent, she welcomes families who are visiting their loved ones in detention. Very often, those families are jerked around by security, denied or delayed entry for capricious administrative reasons. But inside the Radical Hospitality Zone, they have places to sit and rest while waiting, food and water, space to pray. She even keeps a supply of kids' toys for the children to take with them when they leave. Sister Susan also keeps track of deportation vans coming and going, scribbling license plate numbers on a clipboard, and this helps families keep track of where their loved ones are. Sadly, cruelly, one of ICE's more vindictive practices is the clandestine and opaque transferring of detainees throughout their network of camps, and it does often fall to civilians to actually help locate individuals. So I'm watching a short interview online with Sister Susan, and she's sort of puttering around the tent, straightening things up and explaining the work. And she says, part of our call today is to be a witness, to be an encourager, to be a supporter, to be yeast, to spread rumors of hope. Rumors of hope. This is what has stuck with me. Because what is a rumor? It's something you heard from someone who knows someone. It's a whisper of information, possibly truth if you'll let yourself believe in it. It's a ripple of possibility from somewhere, passed secretly from person to person. And in this case, the seed of that rumor is an act of love born out in the midst of so much cruelty. It's a light in the darkness. People who were told, no, there is no love for you here. And then, it's the kind of rumor you want to tell someone about, maybe even sing. When I started writing this sermon last week, it struck me as perhaps a little odd that the visitation of Mary to Elizabeth fell just 1 week after Pentecost. They're totally different timelines. It's a seemingly brief topic switch. But now I don't think it's odd at all. These prayers are songs, and these songs are sermons. Certainly as boldly hopeful as anything you'd find in the book of Acts. In June, which shockingly starts tomorrow, is what we call liberation season. And throughout the month, we'll tell stories of a God who sets the captives free, who breaks chains and lifts up the lowly, who turns power on its head and calls everyone, every single one, to freedom. We'll join Hannah in Mary's song. We'll find new melodies, add a verse or two. Because this is an old song, and it's a new song. It's our song.